real weight loss journey. I'm Richard Greenland, and today I just want to take a little bit of time, just a quick video here to talk about processed food. I just ended up having lunch just a couple hours ago, and it was full of processed food. Some of it was the vegan substitute stuff, others of it was just straight up regular processed food, and I don't feel very well right now. And I know that I'm trying to avoid processed food, but every now and then, that's what there is. Earlier, we were just kind of in a hurry, and so we just threw some stuff together, and that's what we had. So why shouldn't we eat processed food as much? We're not going to say don't ever eat processed food. In fact, most food that we eat is processed at least a little bit. Even to get it to your, from the farm to your table, it's got to be processed a little bit. Whether it's washed, cut, etc. That's all processing. So we want to avoid highly processed food. It is a more accurate term, but we just usually just call it processed food to differentiate it from less processed food, which is more the whole food that we talk about. So why don't we want to eat it? Well, processed food tends to have a lot of things added and or taken away that make it less healthy. One big thing for processed food is going with refined grains. So instead of getting your whole wheat flour, you've got your enriched white flour, which is missing a ton of stuff. It's missing, it's missing some of the fat, which may or may not be okay, because we do need some fat, especially healthy fats, but it's especially missing fiber. It's missing some of the vitamins. In fact, the enriched part of the enriched white flour is where they actually added vitamins to it to kind of make up for the ones they took out in the first place, but they don't actually put back everything that was there originally there. Whole wheat flour will definitely have more and better vitamins than your enriched white flour. And you'll get more fiber out of it too, which is always a plus. Another thing, so that's one thing that they take out, is they take out a lot of the fiber, a lot of the vitamins, things like that when they do processed food. Another thing is that they usually add a lot of sodium, sugar, or fat, or sometimes all three, just to get it to taste better. Because they've already taken out, some of the natural stuff that makes it taste good, or they're just wanting to amp it up to give your taste buds extra taste, so you really, really want to eat more of it. That's how they make money. And so they add all that stuff. Sodium, we're supposed to be keeping our sodium at 2,300 milligrams or less. If you actually have an issue with sodium, which they say about 50% of people in the U.S. do, then you should really be keeping it at 1,500 milligrams or less. It's really, really super easy to hit that mark and even go way above it if you're eating processed food. Sugar, nutrition labels are now required to have the added sugar line on there. And depending on what you're eating, sometimes it's not just about the added sugar, even though that's the most important one to look at. Sometimes even just the natural sugars in there can be a little too much, just depending on your diet, what you eat for the rest of the day, etc. So it's good to keep an eye out for that. Fat is added quite a bit to stuff. There are definitely healthy fats. Monounsaturated and polyunsaturated are actually pretty healthy. Of course, anything needs to be in moderation, so you don't want to just go crazy on those. But those are your good fats. The saturated fat, you still probably need a little bit of that, but it's definitely not what you want to focus on. Saturated fat has been linked to obesity, cancer, all sorts of bad stuff. So you want to stay away from that. Trans fat is even worse. Trans fat is when the company tries to take an unsaturated fat, either monounsaturated or polyunsaturated, and change it chemically to make it more like a saturated fat. The reason they do this is because it adds texture and even sometimes a little bit of flavor, depending on what you're doing it to your food. Trans fat is what you'll usually find a lot in, any processed food, but stuff like French fries. A lot of times they'll have trans fat. Other things like that, the deep fried type of stuff, the stuff that you normally deep fry or put in an oven, but you could deep fry. A lot of those will have quite a bit of trans fat in them. A lot of companies are trying to avoid that since they're required to put the amount of trans fat on their label now, and so that's kind of keeping them accountable. but that's not perfect because you can actually put 0 grams of trans fat on there if it's below a certain amount. I think it's like 0.5 grams or something. If it's less than that, you can actually just put 0 instead. And if the serving size is small enough, not a realistic one really, then you could actually be getting a decent amount of trans fat and not know it. You think you're getting 0 when you're actually getting some. Thing to look for is anything that says partially hydrogenated oil. Peanut butter is really known for this. Peanut butter almost always, unless it's one of the natural ones where the peanut butter separates, the oil separates from the peanut butter and the oil floats on top. If it's not one of those, and if you look at the ingredients label, it'll almost always say partially hydrogenated. If it's partially hydrogenated, it's trans. It's trans fat. Even if they say 0 on the label, they've got some in there. So watch out for that. Definitely want to avoid that. So with that kind of background, let's look at a few common foods. I just grabbed some from my pantry, my freezer. Just grab some here. Let's look at some of these and see what they got. So first, it's already opened. Got tater tots here. So what do we got for tater tots? I'll just throw that up there really quick. So in 9 tater tots, 9 pieces, so 9 tater tots, got 130 calories. That's already not that great. 8 grams of fat, so almost a full gram of fat per tater tot. And the big one here is you've got 450 milligrams of sodium in one serving. That's almost a fifth of your daily intake right there of sodium. Just in 9 tater tots. 9 tater tots. So yeah, and that's not even counting preparing it. If you prepare it in the oven, then sure, you're not going to add any more oil or anything to that. Really, you're just going to cook it as it is, and those nutrients that it says here are correct. If, however, you put them in a deep fryer, like some people do, you're adding a ton of oil to it. So that's going to up the fat content dramatically. Don't do that, please. If you've got to fry them, use an air fryer. Much, much healthier. Okay, next one. Right here, fish sticks. These are popular in my house. They probably shouldn't be, considering they're not very healthy, but they are very popular in my house. Let's take a look here. Even more calories per serving. These are for 4 fish sticks. These are the slightly larger fish sticks than, say, your Fisher Boy. Those are really small. These are a bit bigger, but still 4 sticks, 4 fish sticks. They're not fillets or anything, just sticks. So in 4 sticks, you got 260 calories, 11 grams of fat, 2.5 of that is saturated, and 510 milligrams of sodium. That's 22%, over a fifth, almost a quarter of the amount you're supposed to have for a day, the maximum amount you're supposed to have for a day. It also includes a gram of added sugars. Now, these here, they're not necessarily healthy, but anything that I'm showing here can be included as part of a healthy diet. Just because they're processed doesn't mean you have to cut them out completely. It just means kind of avoid eating too much of them, basically. Fit them into how much you want for your calories, fit them into your sodium levels, everything else. Just try and just fit them in healthily, but don't eat them too often. All right, let's go to some other stuff here. How about some cereal? Lucky Charms, yeah. Got some kids that really like these. Not the healthiest. Here you go. You got the first column shows the cereal alone, and then the second column is with an approximate amount of milk, what they think is an appropriate amount of milk. That will vary depending on the person. And it'll also vary based on whether you use skim milk, 2%, 1%, whole milk, whatever. But let's just take a look at this. In 1 cup of cereal, which is actually kind of a small amount, maybe for a child, like a toddler, or maybe up to like 6 or 7 years old, a cup would be sufficient to fill them up. But for an adult or a teenager, there's no way they're eating a single cup of cereal. It's more like 2 cups. But anyways, in a single cup of cereal, there's 140 calories. That's without the milk or anything. 1.5 grams of fat. Sodium is at 10%, so not terrible. Yeah, not terrible. And then total carbohydrates is 30 grams. Now that's not terrible unless you're going for low carb, which low carb can be a good thing if you're focusing on the right carbs when you do the right carbs. When you're trying to do your carbs, focus on whole grains. This one is, the first ingredient is whole grain oats, so that's good. But the big problem is the total carbohydrates being 30. Nearly half of that, 12 grams, is sugar. And all of the sugar, all of those 12 grams are added sugar. There's no natural sugars in this. And if you look at the ingredients, the first ingredient is whole grain oats. The second ingredient is sugar. The third ingredient, cornstarch, then modified cornstarch, then corn syrup. All that is filler and sugar, basically. So basically whole grain oats and then a bunch of filler and sugar. Not what you want to feed your kids. We probably shouldn't be buying this anymore, but they like it. What can you do? Definitely not the healthiest option for breakfast. So let's try something that Kix. Kix is supposed to be healthier, right? On the top here, it says kid tested, parent approved. Totally upside down. Okay, kid tested, parent approved. Supposedly it's parent approved because it's healthy. Well, let's take a look here. Here's the stats on it, the nutrition facts. 160 calories. So if you go back to the Lucky Charms, that was 140. So this one's also, this one's a bigger serving size, 1.5 cups. So same weight basically, in as far as grams go, but it's an airier cereal. There's more air in the puffs, and so you can get away with a larger amount as far as the volume goes. But still, 160 calories. Sodium is 8%, not terrible. Carbohydrates, 34 grams, but that's more carbohydrates, but there's fewer added sugars. It's still 8 grams of sugar, and all 8 grams is added sugars. And if you look at the ingredients, you've got whole grain corn and cornmeal. Those are okay. Whole grain corn definitely better than the cornmeal. Cornmeal's okay though. Sugar, third ingredient, right there. Even though it's supposed to be a healthier cereal, sugar is the third ingredient. Then you got oil, then you got brown sugar syrup, so more sugar. In reality, they should really be adding that to the sugar. As far as a sweetener goes, if they would add all the sweeteners in here together, it would probably go whole grain corn, then sweeteners. It would be the second ingredient, just like on Lucky Charms. And that's something that a lot of these so-called healthy cereals try to do. They try to make it seem like they're healthier by having the sugar further down in the list, but then they have multiple types of sugar. And since they're different ingredients, technically, they can list them further down, because the way you order the ingredients is, whatever the most is in there, whatever the number one ingredient is, that goes first, and then the next most ingredient goes next, etc. And so if you combine them all into just one sugar, then the sugar goes way up in the ingredients. And so if you separate them out into different types of sugar, like corn syrup, plain sugar, brown sugar syrup, brown rice syrup, I've seen that one, all sorts of stuff. Anything that's a syrup or sugar, or cane juice, evaporated cane juice, just another word for sugar. But if they separate it out like that, they can technically get by with having all sorts of sugar in there, and it's all lower in the ingredients list than what you would expect. And so people are thinking, the ingredients list lists 2 or 3 things before any type of sugar. That must mean it's healthy. No. No. So Kix may be slightly healthier than Lucky Charms. Definitely not what I would consider really super healthy though. Sure, it has all sorts of added vitamins and minerals, just like Lucky Charms, actually. They enriched it with all those different vitamins and minerals, but still not the best choice. Let's move on to something else here. Something that's popular in my family are these granola bars. People think, okay, granola bar, granola, that's got to be healthy. It's got oats and stuff in it. These got chocolate around them, but it's a thin layer, so maybe it's okay. Check out that. 160 calories per bar. That's the same amount of calories as in a cup and a half of Kix cereal. It's got 7 grams of fat, 4.5 of which is saturated fat. That's nearly a quarter of the saturated fat that you can have for a day. So that's a lot. Sodium's really low. That's not a problem on this one. It's only 2%. Sugars, though, we've got 11 grams of sugar, and 10 of those are added sugars. That's 20% of what you're supposed to have, or the maximum amount of added sugars you're supposed to have in a day. And actually, recently, it was suggested by an advisory committee to actually lower the amount of added sugar that people are allowed to have a day, as far as on the nutrition facts panels and all that. But the USDA decided not to go with that just yet. Probably in another 5 years, maybe they will actually lower that. But for now, this is 20% of the maximum amount we're supposed to have. So that's a lot. Looking at the ingredients list, the first ingredient is granola. Now, that's another trick they use, is they combine something to make it bigger than what the other stuff is. But if you look at this, it says granola, and then in parentheses, it's got whole grain rolled oats, sugar, palm kernel and soybean oils, corn syrup, coconut, honey, molasses, soy lecithin, salt, cornstarch, peanuts, almonds, soy flour, egg whites. That's all just in the granola. And if you'll notice, granola has sugar, corn syrup, honey, and molasses. So that's 4 types of sugar, 4 types of sweetener, all just in the first ingredient that they bunch together to be granola. And then after that bunched together granola ingredient, they went on and gave the other ingredients. So the next one after that is corn syrup, so another sweetener, sugar, another sweetener, palm and palm kernel oil. And by the way, palm oil is some of the worst stuff out there. It's got tons of saturated fat and everything. That's why we've got 4.5 grams of saturated fat in this out of the 7 total grams of fat. Yeah, not good. It does have some monounsaturated in there too, which is better, but it's mostly saturated. Definitely don't want that. And then they've got all sorts of other stuff in here. They've mentioned crisp rice. So the Rice Krispies basically that's part of this granola bar. Yeah, it's got some more sugar in that, more palm kernel oils. Basically, it's a disaster waiting to happen. They taste great. I love these things too, but they're not healthy. Even though they're granola bars. We think granola bars are healthy, but they are not healthy. Even if it wasn't for the chocolate on the outside, you can buy these without the chocolate on the outside, and they're just about as bad. They have maybe like a tiny bit less sugar, but they're almost as bad. So anyways, not that. How about something else that's super popular in a lot of households across America? Macaroni and cheese. Yes, we have a toddler, so we got the Paw Patrol with the paw-shaped macaronis. So this stuff, I think most people understand that this isn't actually all that healthy, and yet we still buy it because it's really easy and kids like it. But let's take a look here. So it says there's 2 servings per container. So once you cook it up and you've got half of this box basically, it makes about 1 cup of macaroni and cheese, which is about appropriate, for a kid. An adult would probably just finish the whole box, honestly. But for a kid, half a box is probably about right, 1 cup. So as prepared, here we go. You can see here that we've got 280 as prepared. That's a little bit blurry. Anyways, 280 calories as prepared. We're not going to pay attention to the 250 calorie column because that's without preparing it. And honestly, who takes it straight out of the box and doesn't prepare it and just eats it as is? Nobody does that. So as prepared, you got 280 calories, which is already a huge amount just for a single cup of stuff. Saturated fat, 2.5 grams, that's 12%. That's about 1/8 of what you need for the day, or the max that you should have for the day. It's got a little bit of cholesterol. We don't really care too much about cholesterol levels because honestly, dietary cholesterol doesn't really affect your body's cholesterol levels very much at all. It's a saturated fat that actually increases your cholesterol levels. Sodium is 21%. That's 1/5 of your sodium in 1 cup of mac and cheese. Yeah. Carbohydrates. We got lots and lots of carbohydrates as expected, but thankfully this one doesn't have any added sugars. So that's a plus. One of the few pluses in here. Looking down at the ingredients list, we've got pasta. They've grouped that all together. And it's enriched wheat flour, which again, they break down into wheat flour along with all these extra vitamins that they add, vitamins, minerals. And then they have a little bit of whole wheat flour, some cheese sauce mix, which is also broken down in a bunch of stuff. Basically, each step on this ingredients list, whether it's the cheese sauce or the pasta, it all has tons of sodium. It's lacking in whole grains, and it's got fat, lots of fat. So yeah, it's not it's not good for you. So don't know what you're going to do about that. We haven't figured it out yet either. Thankfully, we have a lot of other stuff that the kids like that's healthier than this, but we do keep this around for just in case we need something really fast. We should probably find a more, a healthier version of this, or something that's just as fast that's also healthy. We'll see. All right, this is the last one I'll do for today. This is a can of soup. This is supposed to be a healthier can of soup. It's Campbell's Well Yes roasted chicken with rice. And so this, like I said, is supposed to be healthier. Most canned soup is absolutely horrid. Tons and tons of sodium is the big thing, along with oftentimes you'll find a lot of fat, and you'll always find refined grains, refined flours, and stuff like that, whether in the pasta or whatever it is. So this one doesn't necessarily have pasta. It's roasted chicken with rice. But let's just take a look at the nutrition on the back here. This one has the serving size as 1 can, which is very reasonable. This can, I don't believe... Yeah, this one you do not actually mix it with water. It's not condensed or anything like your, say, Campbell's chicken noodle soup or Campbell's tomato soup or something like that. It's not condensed like that. So you don't add any water or anything. So a can like this without adding any water is definitely about what you'd get for like a bowl of soup. It'll fill 1 bowl and that's about it. So I don't know why they have the per 1 cup thing on here, probably just to make them look better. But honestly, no one's going to have a cup of soup. If they're going to open the can anyways, they're probably just going to dump this whole thing in a bowl, heat it up in the microwave, and eat it. So we're going with the per 1 can since that's the serving size anyways. So they've got 4.5 grams of total fat, 1.5 grams of that is saturated. So even though this is supposed to be a healthier version, it still has quite a bit of fat for a soup. Also, we've got sodium. Sodium is the killer of all canned soups, pretty much. This can, 1 can, has 51% of the sodium, the max amount of sodium you're supposed to have for a day. So if you have 2 of these, say 1 for lunch, 1 for dinner, you've already hit all your sodium. You shouldn't have any other sodium in breakfast, snacks, anything. That's not good, especially since this isn't going to fill you up. Sure, it's got water in it, which helps with the volume. And we're going to have a video on filling you up and stuff like that later on. But yeah, this is not going to keep you full for very long. Anyways, moving on. That sodium is just terrible. But moving on, there aren't really any added sugars. That's good. It does have a little bit of fiber, 4 grams of fiber. That's not terrible. That's pretty good actually for soup. Most soup doesn't have any or very little fiber, so that's pretty good. It does have quite a few vitamins. Well, I say quite a few, some vitamins, not a ton. As far as ingredients go, we've got chicken bone broth, so it's mostly water again. Roasted chicken meat, carrots, corn, rice, celery, diced tomatoes and tomato juice, water, wild rice. Those are all good actually. Those are all pretty good. Those would be more of the whole foods. They've processed them, cut them up, squished them, whatever, and with the juice and all that, they juiced it. Now we go into some other stuff though. Yeast extract, added salt, chicken fat, onions is fine, flavoring, carrot juice concentrate is fine. It's got some potato starch, xanthan gum, potassium chloride, carrageenan, sugar, spices, cornstarch, locust bean gum. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that is basically for making it either taste or feel better, like mouth feel, the texture and all that. and for making it last longer. Even though it's in a can, you shouldn't have to really put a whole bunch of preservatives in it to keep it working, because the canning process itself does that. So, but anyways, even the ones that are supposedly healthier, like right here it says eat positively, live deliciously. Yeah, positive eating, not so much with this. Tons and tons of sodium in this. Anyways, even the supposedly healthy stuff isn't always the greatest. So it's not just about a type of food or whether you think it's processed or not, or if people have labeled it as processed or not. It really is about looking at the labels. Look at the ingredients list. Is sugar one of the top things? Do they have a ton of things that are hard to pronounce? If so, probably avoid that. Also look at the nutrition facts. Is sodium a really high percentage? Just stay away from it. Are there a lot of added sugars? Stay away from that too. Too much saturated fat? Avoid it. But like I said, you don't have to cut stuff out of your diet completely. If it's something you really like, the taste of, have it. Just have it in moderation and every now and then. Don't have it for every meal or even every other meal or anything like that. Just cut the stuff that's less healthy out of your life. If we focus on eating fewer processed or highly processed foods and more on the whole foods, the natural foods, actual vegetables, whole grains, things like that, we're going to be healthier. Not only will it be healthier, it also fills you up more, gives you more vitamins, more minerals, more of the good stuff like fiber, protein, things like that, and less of the bad stuff, the sodium, the saturated fat, the sugar, etc. So I hope I've been able to help everybody kind of understand a little bit more about processed foods. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as I can. And I'll probably do a follow-up on this video sometime in the future, going over some other more popular foods too. But anyways, if you haven't subscribed, feel free to subscribe so you can keep up to date with how I'm doing. I'm going to get a progress update here in a couple days. Once a week I do those. And anyways, I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.